name's David. I'm 27. I grew up, my parents were both evangelical Christians. I remember starting to go to church around 7 or 8, twice a week, Sundays and Wednesday nights sort of thing. I always hated going to church. I think it was like God's put that spirit in me from very young. It's my least favorite thing to do. I was always excited, like when my parents would say, "Oh, we don't have to go to church today." Like, yes. I definitely was not one of those kids. I didn't really understand the kids at church who liked going and stuff like that. I always felt very out of place, but so I grew up in that, doing that from like age 8 to like 16. Got baptized. Always had a love for the Lord, and it was very, you're just a product of whatever environment you put in. So I was put in the religious system, so it made a religious person. So I went to college in Pittsburgh, and turned 18, and I had a fervent heart for the Lord, so I joined these college ministry groups. I led missions trips, I led prayer walks, I led this, that, and the other, Bible studies, and just doing, right, which is the Christian way, having to do more. And the largest thing out of that journey in Christianity is guilt and shame of your daily actions, like every Sunday being this reckoning where you have to face your own failures before God, and it's this sort of emotional abuse the church has where they judge you for what you've done, and they put these moral standards on you while at the same time offering grace, right? So it's this push and pull of you're such a dirty sinner, but here God's grace is new, and it's this constant every Sunday sort of pushing and pulling, which is just kind of, most of church is just a big game of emotional abuse. Same thing with how church services, it's we start with all these really emotional songs and everything gets you in this state, and then we're going to preach to you, and it's all a play on the emotions, which keeps you in it. So for me, the cycle of seeing how I couldn't maintain the standards that were preached to me, that intense emotional guilt, and that really negatively affecting me and my psyche and everything like that. But still being in that system, thinking that, knowing that Christ lived, and knowing that I just have to keep trying. And so eventually I graduate college, and I go to this conference, this called the Passion Conference. It's in Atlanta. It was like 70,000 18 to 25-year-olds in this big football stadium with all John Piper and all these big preachers and music, and it was like a huge thing. And I went with my sister and brother-in-law, and I noticed that I started getting this feelings that something was wrong, especially as I started reading a lot of 2 Timothy at that time, and reading about the end of Paul's life, being alone, having no one there, this guy who wrote large parts of the New Testament, right? This guy who was the ultimate saint, right? And no one followed him. And we look at the ultimate saints of today, they fill football stadiums, right? They make millions of dollars, and they have huge speaking tours and everything. And it just didn't align with me, and something felt wrong. Something felt wrong with the way that these people were selling merchandise and all this stuff. Something just felt off, and it was around in 2020. It was around that time, and that was January 1st, 2020, and then the pandemic happened around March 2020, right? And I stopped going to church. I stopped going to the Bible study that I was in. And I was, in preparation for this, I was looking through my YouTube search history and I found when I started started finding some of Clyde's videos. I don't know how. I think the first one I watched was on how Hebrews isn't for today. The first time someone's saying, certain parts of the Bible, because that's something that always never made sense to me. I'd read James, then I'd read Paul's letter. Like, man, these are saying opposite things, right? And the Christians would always try to make these illogical explanations for it and tell you it's just a mystery and stick your head in the sand and give your tithe. But I started, and I always appreciated in Clyde how logical and the arguments are, and I strike myself, I consider myself a learned kind of person, so I felt I didn't ever have to turn my brain off when watching, and things started just I started having lots of questions, and I probably spent from April to that whole time of the pandemic until things started reopening, maybe in July 2020. So it was that whole situation where churches were closed that gave me the opportunity to be away from that for a while to explore the truth, and so that was, so maybe I had spent 3 or 4 months, 5 months studying, and maybe by August 2020 I'd come back, things had reopened, I'd gone back to the church and already got kicked out because it didn't take long for me starting to share some of these things for them to say, to give me the right foot of fellowship, and then I felt free though. It's like whatever to me. But then this whole thing happened where in August 2020 I got I was living in St. Louis, Missouri at the time, and I got a call from a detective because I was being wanted for a crime, and that wasn't good. I'm like, dang it. So my whole life kind of unraveled at that point. Lost my job, lost a lot of things, and I moved back to Ohio where I live now, and I didn't know what to do, and I hadn't been arrested yet, just I was about to be, but that was not great. So I was very distraught, very emotionally in turmoil, and my father had come to the Lord. My father had struggled many years with drug addiction, and he came to the Lord through this Christian rehab, and out in Michigan, where they fix your drug addiction by making you a Pentecostal Christian, basically. It's like a 1-year program or whatever. He went in the 90s or whatever, and I was scared of the police chasing me, and I was scared. I didn't know what to do, and my family kind of conflated you're doing all this illegal stuff, and then you're also leaving religion. This must all be together, and I love my parents very much. I have great parents. We don't see eye to eye on religious things, but I still love my parents, and so he suggested, well, why don't you go to this rehab thing? I don't have a drug or alcohol issue, but we can just give some reasons. You'll be out of the state. You'll be somewhere safe. The cops won't know where you're at. And he didn't really tell me that he kind of wanted me to go to get back in Christianity and everything, which I suspect. But I was like, okay, I trust my dad. Whatever, I'll go. So in August 19th, 2020, I enrolled in the Western Michigan Adult and Teen Challenge in Muskegon, Michigan, and I spent 3 months there. And I went so after about 4 or 5 months of learning about universal reconciliation, right after that, I went to a place where I went to Pentecostal Church every day for 3 months, which is where they're teaching me eternal conscious torment and all this sort of stuff. And it was quite a experience. And there at this rehab or whatever, you have no internet access, basically no contact with the outside world. I tried bringing in Clyde's books and stuff like that, and they banned them and put them in a closet, and I wasn't allowed to read them. So all I had was an ESV Bible, and I was being taught all this, all this stuff again, like fire and brimstone being preached at me every day. And so I spent 3 months with no references, no research materials, just trying to figure out, because I didn't have like a deep understanding of things at this point, but I spent 3 months by myself studying and studying and studying with pages and pages and pages of figuring out why hell isn't real, why there's more than one gospel, why all these sorts of things. And eventually I got kicked out because I was poisoning the flock there as well. And on election day 2020, but God was faithful through it all, and I came out of that, oddly enough, instead of brainwashing me back into Christianity, I was even more emboldened to live the truth that, and it was a very emotionally difficult time, but it's where God had to lead me through, where I had to eventually, one of my old Bibles I've ever written down, it was September 16th, 2020, where I decided that, I had this internal decision within me for months, conflict. I cried and cried and cried over this, but how my family was telling me, my family came and visited me at the rehab, and they said, you tried to bring in this Clyde Pilkington's books in, and we researched him, and God, do you know the things this guy believes? And this guy he's the devil himself. And so it's like the only people you trust in your life, the only people who are your advocates at this very difficult part in your life are telling you, and this system that you grew up in for your entire life, it's all you know, and that's on one side, and it's what's keeping you safe as well. And then, so everything is stacked up on this side to conform, complete this program, and then maybe that'll help me in the future with, if I get in more legal trouble. It will be in my family's good graces. It's what I know. It's what's familiar. And then on the other side was the truth, right? Yeah. And I had to make a decision for myself where, am I going to follow this, right? Or am I going to honestly seek out the truth? And I made a decision for myself after months of anguish that I was going to follow the truth and forsake everything. And I was talking about how there was Otis Sellers has a really great article. It's on Clyde. It's on Study Shelf, where about Christian individualism. But basically in this walk, you have to accept the fact that we're gonna be alone, and you have to forsake the innate human desire to just conform to groups, to conform to community, because these are sorts of things that manipulate, that the churchianity uses as a mechanism to keep you blind, because we have such an innate desire to be a part of a group, be fit in, and I had to learn to fit out. And so I left this rehab, and luckily the legal issues that I was facing, I ended up not even going to jail or anything. It all got handled, and I rebuilt my life and rebuilt everything. And I've had I think the biggest takeaway from where I was versus where I am now is, and what I've learned practically, is that I have such freedom now, and the guilt and shame that I lived with for so long is completely gone, because I know that all of my failures and my faults are divine. They are perfect imperfections, and every single one of the mistakes, the stupid things I was doing with the law, everything, that was God's plan for me, and everything that I do in the future, good, bad, or indifferent, is God's plan, and that gives you such a relief, such a weight off your shoulders to know that your actions aren't your own, They're God-breathed, and you can just live your life and go. You can actually start to live life at that point. And also, not having to worry about other people's, being okay with other people's decisions. And that, in that time, I think from the last time I gave this testimony to now, the thing that's changed the most is accepting, I had this bigotry, right, against atheists maybe. When I was a Christian, I had this bigotry against atheists, against people of other religions. How could you believe this? And then when I came into the truth, that bigotry just shifted towards Christianity, right, where I'm like, man, these idiot Christians, they're so stupid. I had to recognize in myself that it was the same malcontent and the same obscenity within myself, just shifted in a different direction. And lately, that's what I've been coming into the truth about, is a realization that, the greatest false religion in the world bears the name of Jesus. And that was his plan. His plan was to have the greatest deception be named after him, which took me a very long time to. I'd be like, why? And he told me, he's just, hey, that's what I want. And so now, as I've come out, now I'm in this process of just growing in this truth. No more like big harrowing events in the past few years since this happened, but just trying to grow in that every day. I'm so thankful for all of you. I'm thankful for each of one of you who came here and had fellowship together, and how much I cherish this time. So thank you.
Thank you.